just a moment ago, we were talking about Diabolus Sema, the new Blood legendary that's coming out in the new expansion. This card is a 9 mana 6/7, and it's got Fanfare, put a Demonic Storm and a Demonic Strike into your hand. If Vengeance is active for you, recover 6 play points. This follower can't be damaged by spells. So, Akka, what do you think about this?
So I think this is a really interesting. I think there's a lot going on with this card. There's a lot of conditions to it. You need Vengeance to get the play points back. There's also the fact that you need to have turn 9 play points, obviously. And this just asks the question, what kind of archetype are we going to get from it? Because this also has immune to spells, and we might see an archetype that is all about being immune to spells, which is kind of interesting. This D shift, the deck that is weakest to it, is gonna get rotated out. So I'm hoping to see, and I love Vengeance Blood, so I'm really excited.
I love Control Blood, and I also love this card. Like I think this card is just gonna be sick. Like to me, this card just seems like it wants to grind somebody out of a game, just because it's got so many effects that are hard to deal with in the late game. It gives you 2 cards to your hand. And it's also a body. It can't be easily dealt with. And let's be real, by like turn 9, if you're not in Vengeance, you're in a pretty good spot.
Yeah,
Usually,
yeah.
usually.
There's only there's minor setbacks for this card. I think that the 9 play point is like one of the worst in the game because there's Mr. Bahamut coming up, and he doesn't really care if you have immune to spells. So it's good. Imagine Spawn of the Abyss at 9 play points, right? It would be far weaker than what it is right now because like Bahamut.
Imagine Spawn of the Abyss at 8 play points. It's far weaker than it used to be too.
Oh my god. Yeah, let's not talk about that. We're talking about new exciting cards. Cards that do new things. Also, I mean, I think it was someone on NG was playing Control Blood with aggressive options like Razor Claw and Blood because you wanted to break the mirror. You wanted to finish up games.
Mm-hmm.
This might make Control Blood mirrors a lot more exciting and fast because, well, you just have 6 damage from mana.
Yeah, this lets you hold, like, if you had a more aggressive game plan, this gives you like a somewhat sticky, it gives you six reach for having the Demonic Storm and the Strike in your hand. That's points of reach. And with a
Yep.
difficult to remove body, that is like good damage that this could start closing a game out with.
It also opens up like a new archetype, like hybrid Vengeance Blood with control, like hybrid of Control and Vengeance Blood, aggressive Vengeance Blood.
Mm-hmm.
Someone was playing, I think it was Bottles, that was playing on Wonderlands. At the end of Wonderlands, he was playing, toying around with the list that he saw from one of his teammates, I believe. He was playing like an hybrid Blood with the win condition being Bloody Mary with the Ragery Claws. So instead of using the Bloody Mary with the Ragery Claws, we might see Sema fitting that role because it's like we mentioned. It's kind of like 6 damage on the next turn, not necessarily the turn to play it. But contrary to Bloody Mary, it's actually a threat, and you don't need to spend 10 mana on it necessarily. So, and you can also play Sema and clear the board. It's almost like a big Wrath Break, right? Because you could always play it and then Morning Storm. The problem is you can be like really.
I like this thing. What do you think about the art on this card?
I think it's amazing. Like I've been asking for more cards like this. Like the fact that the Evolve is so different art style and like aesthetically as well. Because one is like reminds me of statues, and the other one is so alive, like the flames and the lava. I love it.
It's like you're looking at the card from like 2 different angles. Usually the like evolved artwork is just like it mirrored with like some slightly different things going on in it. Instead of like
Yeah,
being mirrored, this one's just more like at a different angle.
and it looks like one is like death, is like a sleeping statue, and the other one looks like he just woke up, like he's alive now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's got way more going on. It looks pretty dangerous. That is something that like if I wake up and that's next to my bed, I'm not gonna be a happy guy. Like I'm gonna be pretty scared. But so let's move on to Blood Drinker's Brand, because this one's also pretty cool, I think. So this one,
Yeah,
Mhm.
go ahead.
This one is a 3 mana. It's 3 mana spell. It's got deal 4 damage to a follower, and then you give it Drain if it's a Bloodcraft follower. And then, if you're in Vengeance, you recover 2 play points.
Again, there's a lot to talk about. So what's your favorite thing about this card?
I what I like about this card is this. I feel like is going to give back Blood something akin to Diabolic Drain once Diabolic Drain would go away. In that, Diabolic Drain did 4 damage for 5 mana, and it did 1 damage, or it did 4 damage for 1 mana, depending on if you were Vengeance or not. This one feels like a fixed version of it to me, in that instead of costing 5, it costs 3. But if you're in Vengeance, it refunds 2 play points, so it's like it costs 1 instead.
Yeah, I think that this card will be played more in blood decks that do not require blood to be active, because like you mentioned, instead of playing 5 mana costs, you can pay this for 3.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, I think that the second part of the card is I don't think it's gonna be like
The Give It Drain?
the effect. Yes. I know you were talking about it, like you really like it. I think most people will play for the 4
I think this card, like most of the times you play this, like my guess is like 7 times or 8 times out of the 10 times you play this card, it's going to be for the damage, maybe more. And I think just occasionally it's going to have just sprinkled in, hey, I can burst gain 6 HP with this in a situation where I really needed 6 HP. And I think if you're putting this card in your deck, you want to be putting it in primarily for the reason that I want to do 4 damage to something. And then, hey, maybe I get lucky.
Like I think I know what side games is going for with this card. I think they want you to play Psema on 10, Demonic Storm, like, or maybe evolve Psema, play this card, then gain like 9 HP, and then Demonic Storm like the rest of
Oh, that's
something.
that's
Like
actually crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's cool. Like you mentioned, you get the burst 9 killing from Psema,
yeah.
and you need Vengeance for Psema, so
Um,
gets you out of Vengeance immediately.
that's actually an incredibly strong turn because Sema has 8
Yeah.
HP. I wouldn't mind dealing 4 damage
No,
to my.
he doesn't get damaged because
Oh,
he's
yeah.
immune to spell damage. Yeah. That's why they reveal both cards, I believe, because they want you to play both at the same time. Something like that.
I didn't
Yeah.
even think about how those two work together. Yeah, I like this card even more than I liked a moment ago. I think this card's really good.
Yeah. I think this teases that they're pushing an archetype of followers that are not damaged by spells. I think Blood is going on that path probably this expansion.
That's
Like,
that's Aka's bold claim of the
yeah.
expansion.
Because the reason why you print a card like this is because you want to play it on Bloodcraft followers and you don't want to damage your followers. So I think they're pushing that.
If we do see mechanics like that, I think this card can only get better if they if they make mechanics like that. And just at the baseline, I think this card seems very strong to me. It's modal and it's versatile.
I think, on the other hand, I think it's the opposite. I think it's not that versatile because it requires you to be in Vengeance. It requires you to have 3 play points hanging around because remember, this is not a 1 play point. Even though you get the discount, you do need to pay 3 for this. So it might be awkward with the ordering because, like with Diabolic Drain, you could play Belphegor and then Diabolic Drain.
Yeah,
With
this
this,
you
you
can't do
cannot.
that.
You cannot do that because you need the follower first to give it Drain, but then you can't play Belphegor. Yeah, because you don't have enough play points.
It's
So I
possible.
think that it's not going to replace, but we would never get a replacement with that, like, because it's just that card is just too strong. That card carries blood.
I think this card is very similar to Diabolic, and I like that. And like there are sometimes situations where like, when you're playing Blood and you're like, I really wish I could gain HP, and you're sitting with a Diabolic Drain in your hand and you can't. With this, you can. If you have a follower on board, you can damage that follower, and you can just start gaining 6 instead of 2. It's like 6 or it's 4. Or it's like it's a good number.
Yeah. No, there's been situations where like just healing is very good.
I think the fact that this is just has potential for healing shouldn't be slept on. And what I find really interesting is that this is 2 cards. This is the second card that just for Blood that says, and you recover play points. And I think Blood recovering play points while in Vengeance is actually super cool. and I'm interested to see if this is something that they're going to continue to keep doing.
Yeah, I'm a fan to see. I am a fan. I am happy to see that they're exploring more options for vengeance instead of just being full out aggression.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited to see if uh they make like a ramp, quote unquote ramp blood vengeance craft, like something like gain a lot of mana, play a lot of spells for low amounts of play points. And again, I mentioned this before on the other podcast. I love ordering because I think it differentiates the skill of a player. If you are correct with your order, you get rewarded, and like giving me cards like this is something that I really like.
I like this one. So let's move on to this last one. This last one that we have is Reach of the Archdemon. I think this card has an awesome name. I think this card has cool art, and I just like this card. So it is a 6 mana spell, and it's got deal 3 damage to all followers. If Vengeance is active for you, recover 3 play points. So another card with this, if Vengeance is active for you, recover play points.
Yeah, it's a revelation of the Archdemon. Yeah, just kidding. It's not. It's someone was saying it's the explosion of the demons.
Yeah, this card kind of feels like, because Explosion is what? Explosion is 6 mana for deal 3 damage.
Yeah,
So this
it
card's
reads the same. Yeah.
it's kind of the same. Um, I I want to hear your thoughts about this card first, actually, before I say mine.
Again, it's one of those cards. Recover 3 play points, so it means that you will be able to at turn 6 if you have Revelation. You can play this card and then develop a board. This is this is why we call it Revelation. It's close to Revelation. It's obviously weaker because again, Revelation is just way too strong. I think Games acknowledged that, but they just didn't want to nerf it,
Mm-hmm.
so they just changed it rotation.
Revelation felt good when you saw 8 damage on everything. That's why they didn't
Exactly.
want to nerf it. But
This is like you mentioned. This is versatile. Gives you options. You can develop. You can even like develop your followers before you play this one. Like Belphegor survives the hit,
mm-hmm.
so it gives you like a couple of options.
I I'm my initial thoughts, like looking at this card, is I feel like this is underwhelming, just because since it's 6 mana, the fact it does 3 damage to all followers, and that's cool, right? But
Yeah,
the followers that die to that are gonna be played turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, turn 4, and then on turn by the time it's turn 6, that's when people are playing their 4/4s, their 5/5s, stuff like that. And I feel like this might just be too slow. That's what I how I initially see it. But I could also see, like, in a world where people are playing like grinder decks, they're playing a whole bunch of carrots, they're playing a whole bunch of goblin mages, where late in the game after all the evolves are spent, and people have all these 2/2s laying around, this becomes great. It becomes 3 mana, wipe a board, and then you get some play points, and then you get to play some other
yeah.
stuff.
I think this is I think this is something that you could play on a shadow heavy meta because it kills most of the zombies, kills the skeletons. It doesn't kill your followers. Like I saw people having to play because desperation mended it, having to play Belphegor into Revelation.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you could play Belphegor into this one, and you wouldn't even kill your own Belphegor. So I guess it's a plus on that. But in some matchups, it's just like doesn't kill Spawn of the Abyss. It doesn't kill Sabreur. It doesn't kill like there's some Righteous Devil, like the mirror, this is going to be obsolete. Revelation was not obsolete. It wasn't the best card, but he always had impact because it always killed the mid range followers, like you mentioned, the 5 health, the 6 health. Revelation always killed them. Now you can't. So
This
it's
won't kill like
definitely going to
anything
make
in
the
Haven.
mirror. Yeah, exactly. It's going to make the mirror a lot weaker. This is more for like an aggressive meta. And I don't think Vengeance Blood, the aggressive Vengeance Blood, is going to even try to run this. I think it's only for Control Blood, and because some Vengeance Bloods actually were running Revelation,
Mm-hmm.
because 4 play points allows you to develop while
While
moving
playing,
it,
you
right?
can play a Blood
Yeah,
Wolf afterwards.
exactly. So this is a lot weaker on that sense. So I think only Control players, and it's meta dependent, so it's not impressive.
Yeah, I think I'm interested. I think out of the 3 cards, this one looks the weakest to me. Out of the 3 cards that we got revealed.
Which is sad because the art just rocks. It's so cool.
Yeah, this card just like I think a lot of card game players just in general. Like I think we like AoEs, like cards that just do mass damage. Something about them just feels good.
Feels
Uh,
powerful, like
mhm.
exploding the board. Oh,
And the artwork on this one combined with like the name on this one, just like everything, it just feels like a nice card to play. And I hope I get to play this one.
I wish it would read like destroy all followers, because it's what the hand kind of is doing. It's like destroying this battlefield. And
Yeah,
now when you look at it, it's just killing skeletons and carrots and goblin mages. It's not killing knights or
it's killing
I don't know.
toves. It's killing toves upon
It's killing
toves.
those.
It
It,
is destroying droves of toves.
it is killing knights. Knights are 1/1, so I guess.
So, mm, I like
Uh,
that one.
that's the last card, right?
Yeah, that is the last card.
So we are excited to see more. Would be anxious and waiting patiently. I know Zero was saying, "I just want spoilers. I just want spoilers. Give them
Spo-
fast."
spoilers are my favorite thing ever. I
And we got blood spoilers, and we know we both love blood spoilers. So we're gonna be waiting for, and we'll talk about them as soon as we see more. So continuing on, this weekend we will have the NG top six
Mhm.
for Europe and NA, and as you know, I will be participating on that because I got first place in my group. Yay! So announcing the results, we have from Group A Europe, we had Fatina. Well, I think no one was surprised by that. He's been showing a really good performance. He got first last season as well. So second we got Essia, again, not a surprise. And third place we got Kaonis. That actually surprised me because a lot of people were saying that the auto invite people would be have an easy time, but he managed to qualify on third, and I think he actually beat SCM, but I might be wrong. But I know he beat one of the big giants, let's say the Sharks. On my group, I got first place and second place, Meow. That surprised me. I was a newcomer. He was the only newcomer qualifying in Europe, which RNG.
but
People were saying it's an RNG game. I don't know, man.
I
I mean,
I think they're potentially just good players out there, and this is
yeah,
time for like someone like me out to shine.
yeah. This is again proof that if you're good enough, you are consistent, you can make it again and again and again. And third place, we got Cheapy. It was close. It was almost out of the tournament, but he managed to come close, and it was a nail to the bite. I mean, he had to win against Meow, which is showing is a really strong player, and he managed to do it. And then in America, we had us on Group A Fantasy qualifying on first place, joined by Gengar, which surprised me because I only saw Gengar's first games and he was at 0-2, I believe. Yeah, and then he made it back and got 3-2, qualified. And then that Eplicus on the other side, it was 3-0, then made it out 3-2. On Group B, we had Manasurge's Jays, again, consistency, the 2 times NA champion, made it out of the groups again. And then we got Underwear, a new player to make to the top six. He played last season, but only this season he qualified. And then we have Vito, another world contender for the World Grand Prix and Rage. He qualified to that, and now he qualified to top six. So on America, contrary to Europe, we have a lot of new faces. Actorox and Care Package, the previous top six from last season, didn't actually qualify.
So
Um,
so three out of the people who qualified this NGE also qualified last NGE, right? Three out of the four
uh,
people
for for America or for Europe?
for both. Not qualified. Just getting first place actually. Just like the people with the first place
Oh yeah,
finishes
yeah,
in
yeah.
their on their side.
Exactly.
Three out of the four of them are the same people.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think that just goes to show there is definitely skill in the game.
Yeah,
There is
yeah,
definitely the consistent players are the ones getting there.
yeah. Exactly. And Jay Z showed that, and he's showing that again. And hopefully, I can repeat what he did. And but it's gonna be hard. So tune in this weekend, Saturday. This Saturday is gonna be the top six EU. We will play the games, and we will qualify the top three players. They're gonna be decided this weekend, and then on next week we are going to qualify third place, second place, and first place. So for Europe and NA, it's gonna be the same thing. We're gonna see a lot of games. See, I think 6 or 7 games, and gonna qualify the top three. Then next week we will see the winners finals, the losers finals, and then the grand finals. So that's it for the tournament update.
Exciting stuff. I always like seeing NG, especially like once we get towards the ends of NG. That's when it's the most entertaining because that's when
Yeah,
you know.
it's kind of like playoff season, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So today, the main thing we wanted to talk about today was last week we talked about Forest. This week we wanted to talk about Sword. We had gone over some stuff. Just wanted to talk about some general things about the class. Now, Aka, out of all the classes, how do you feel about Sword? Is this like one of your more enjoyed classes? No, you're giving a thumbs down.
Yeah. I'm sorry, people that love Sword. It's. I'm not gonna say it's my least favorite. It's one of the least favorites, but I'm gonna save that one for the next episode. But Sword, yeah, I don't enjoy Sword too much because it feels linear. The game plan of Sword feels almost the same no matter what archetype you play. It's always follower centric. It's always about board state, and you gotta play for that board state. And as soon as you lose that board state, it's very hard to come back. So the overall game plan of the class is, like I mentioned, board control is essential. Like
Hmm.
when you lose board control, it's very hard to come back. You have cards like White Paladin, Council of Card Knights, Tsubaki, Luminous Mage, and Maisie. Those are the main focus cards that allow you to come back. So if you expect a meta that is very heavy on board control and you're not winning it, I look into those cards.
So these are cards that that they allow you to come back when you're just like a little bit behind on board. Like Council is a card that like it's able to get in a 2-for-1 with that Bane unit while leaving things on board. Your White Paladin's able to just make a really clunky board that's hard to deal with. It
Yeah, and like there's also a cool combo with Mars and White Paladin, allowing you to get the pseudo veteran lancers, your
Mhm.
knights, your ward knights, and also like you mentioned, Council of Card Knights will evolve the Bane follower. Most of the time, it's not gonna die. It has 5 health. It's a really good breakup number, and it's gonna allow you to possibly kill something else or
But
force AOE removal. So
But one of the things that I want to point out is like we were saying that these are the cards that allow Sword to come back. Now, one thing that you'll notice out of these cards, like card like Luminous Mage, you look at that and you're like, how does this really allow me to come back compared to something like a Revelation? Like Sword lacks things like a Revelation style effect to grab the board back once it loses it.
yeah, like the closest thing we have is Cyclone Blade, and that is a symmetrical board clear wipe, which, like Revelation, deals damage to every single follower. The problem is, Blood could go without followers, but Swordcraft, they just don't have enough spells to kind of push that. They need followers, they need board states. If you're killing your own followers and most of your followers have low health, you're not going to have a big impact. So cards like Cyclone Blade just don't make the cut.
So the way that Sword is able to like make up for lack of like big AoE clears like that is through having lots of storm and rush units. It's able to just control the board, like gets in fast, gets in aggressive, and just kind of like beats down the board pretty down and dirty.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. It has one of the fastest game plans. Most people hate it for that because it it feels like it lacks in interactiveness because you just play a storm follower. You're able to hit the face immediately. There's nothing you can answer uh, except playing wards. But yeah.
yeah. Um, some another one of the mechanics that happens to be pretty common in Sword is ambush. Now I know we talked a bit about this last time, and I know you had some thoughts on ambush.
I've calmed down a bit. I've chilled a bit. I was trying to tell people that this is the least interactive mechanic in the game, but Mr. Suzero reminded me there are cards like Aegis exist, so I was wrong. Sorry for that. But let's be honest, it does feel like that. It feels like you have no way to interact because most classes have no way to do ambush followers. So ambush, basically, for everyone that's watching, ambush is a mechanic that doesn't allow your opponent to target the card. So if you have a removal spell or you want to attack an ambush follower, you cannot because you cannot click it, you cannot target. Which makes it so that only random effects like Themis Decree, Revelation, things that deal AoE damage or
Tribunal.
destroy a random target. Tribunal are the only ways to effectively answer it. And if you're noticing, the cards I'm saying are like Blood, Haven, Dragon, and Shadow sometimes. So
And Will of the Forest.
it's very conditional how to remove that, and it makes it doesn't make fun because the impending doom is there on the board, and you cannot deal anything. Can't do anything.
It's it's a bit of a feels bad mechanic. Another thing about ambush is like a lot of the cards that have ambush on it. Same thing goes for Storm actually, and I believe the same goes for Rush. Is all these cards tend to be just a little understated for these effects, and that further pushes Sword into this game plan of I just have to beat down
Yeah,
because its followers just can't fight pound for pound with others.
yeah, you lose a lot of value when you invest your deck into cards like Ambush or Rush or Storm. You're losing stats, like you mentioned. Like you have to trade stats for the keywords, like Storm again, Rush. The fact that you can decide trades, that is very powerful. I guess we could talk about that. Shadowverse has the evolve mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
For those who watching us, evolve allows you to
Let,
give your card Rush and +2/+2. Go ahead.
I was gonna say let's pretend that the majority of the people know what Rush does, but I guess we've got or not Rush does, but what? Yeah, let's just
Evo.
go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Shadowverse is a really cool game because it gives you this evolve mechanic, which allows you to destroy traits and actually come back. And I guess Sword is the main class that runs Rush for that. And what they're trying to do is to decide the trades and control the board with cards like Gino, Blitz Lancer, but they're trading stats for.
The main thing for Sword that I find kind of weird that Sword just doesn't get to use that much is like its class mechanic. So its class mechanic, we probably should have led with this now that I think about it. But its class mechanic is the commander and officer you commander and officer followers, and some amulets happen to be commanders as well. So this is like the main thing about Sword. Like your commanders and your officers are supposed to care about each other a lot. And one thing that we see is just there aren't too many Sword cards where that's relevant.
I think that the problem with Sword and the reason why I don't like the class too much, it's because the main mechanic splits your deck in half. Your archetypes will have commanders and will have officers. And most of your officers do not care about other officers while they care about commanders and vice versa. The problem with that is that it's so conditional. If you don't have a commander on the board, you're not going to have an effect. And even if you get the effect, the payoff isn't that good. Most of the payoffs are like gain a 9, gain a plus a 1/1, or or destroy a follower, gain a 1/1 if you have a commander.
Do you remember the name of the one we were talking about the other day? My favorite Sword card. It is a 5 mana Dance of Death. So it's 5 mana destroy a follower, but it doesn't do the 2 damage. So it's 5 mana destroy the follower, and if you have a commander, you get a knight.
That payoff is worse than Dance of Death, and Dance of Death is just neutral. So why would you care about commanders or officers? I mean, you don't, because go ahead.
You have to jump through a lot of hoops, I feel like, to get these commander synergies, and they're just so rarely worth it. I think the best one is Gawain, but the problem I feel that Gawain has, and Gawain is actually a card that's been seeing more play lately, right?
Yeah.
But I think one of the main problems, and I think this is starting to be alleviated now, but previously Gawain just didn't have that many commanders up and down the mana curve to just actually hit.
Yeah. It's now that with the inclusion of Mars and 3 play point commanders, I mean, Gawain sees more value and can easily get like 3 or 4 mana out of play points out of Gawain.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, that's one of the biggest payouts, like you mentioned. But most of the cards don't have that big of payoff. Like, it doesn't necessarily promote or reward you for deck building, thinking about command. I don't remember the last time Arrowing came to me and it was like, I'm gonna build this Swordcraft deck, thinking about my commander and follow officer synergy. No one does that. No one has done that. No one cares about that, and that makes me sad because it is the class mechanic. most people just recognize sword as being the storm, the rush, the follower class, and they don't ignore the commanders, which they're kind of cool. I mean, lore wise, it's kind of cool.
I think I want to say with the past few expansions, with cards like Barbarossa, which is like commander that's always coming back to your hand, and things like Gawain that we talked about earlier. Gawain's been around for a while, but like and like all the 3 mana legendaries that got introduced, or 3 mana commanders that got introduced. I want to hope that we're moving more into the commander officer tribe mattering more. I have hopes for this.
Yeah, that is my wish. I wish sword was more focused on that and less focused on ambush. Let's kind of ignore that side games, please. I don't want to see him. Like we had Ephemera, we have Imperia, I guess. We had our problems with ambush followers. Kunoichi Master, that is annoying. That is like, oh, we mentioned like when you have an ambush follower, you have to cut its stats just to not be this overpowered card. And like Kunoichi Master is a very good follower for 5 play points.
Konoichi Master is like that's the kind of card that there are so many sword cards that are at 5 play points, and it's incredible how that card is still consistently just like a pretty good card for what you're getting. You're getting 3 HP worth of stats for 5 mana, and you're getting 5 attack, so you're getting a 5/3 sort of.
Yeah, and it cannot be removed easily, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's very hard to deal with, and like I mentioned, like ambush. I think the reason why I don't like ambush, and most people don't like ambush, is because it's very aggressive. I think that side games has made us believe that ambush is just meant for aggressive games. Every single card that we have at the moment for ambush requires you to set up like big chunks of damage, or just it's just offensive. Like if a Mara gives +1 attack, Kunoichi Master has more attack than health. I kind of want to see going into the future different game plans. Game plans like buff the health of your followers, like the anti ephemera, I guess. But
Or maybe like do like random damage to one random damage to everything your opponent has, kind of thing.
yeah, more
Kind
like I have this permanent threat that you cannot deal with easily that is gaining me value instead of like doing damage to your face.
like I like I don't ambush is an interesting mechanic. I enjoy it. But I don't dislike it and I don't like it. Like it's just like it's a mechanic that's just kind of there. It exists in a few card games. It's just annoying to me.
Yeah.
But
And the thing is, like both sides of the coin, right? When you play against it, you're like, oh my god, how do I deal with it? And when you play with it, you're like praying there, like bless RNG, please don't deal with my stealth, because it's so all in. Every single stealth card is so all in.
I,
It's
I've
like Imperia, and go ahead.
I very rarely play Konoichi Master and like actually feel 100% safe because there's usually there's gonna be something that can just like I lose the game off this and there's not
Yeah,
and but I mean that's just I suppose that's just how card games work in general. So that's just that might be nitpicking a bit, but
nah,
so
it's cool.
so let's talk about so we were talking about when you're playing sword, you generally want to just control the flow of the board. You usually want to leave 1 or 2 reasonably sized followers on the board just so you're able to pressure your opponent. Usually. So when you're playing against sword, what do you think the most important things are?
Keep clean boards. Like we mentioned, Sword doesn't have a lot of payoffs when you have commanders or followers or officers, sorry, but if you leave a commander or an officer on the board, you're just allowing your opponent to gain extra value, extra damage with cards like Centaur Vanguard, with cards like Mars, with cards like
The
uh,
the 1 mana 1/3 commander that buffs your officers.
yeah, Princess Vanguard. So like keep clearing sword boards, and like we mentioned, they have hard time to come back. So just keep it as clear as possible and develop big followers, because sword doesn't have a lot of hard removal, and they will have trouble dealing with your big threat.
Mm-hmm. So another good way to be annoying for sword, just put up a ward. They have trouble dealing with those. Uh,
Yeah, or cards that heal you. Unica and Sibyl most of the times feel like spells.
those are both like usually pretty strong against them. Things that can just usually, if you're able to slow the game down, sword is the type of class that it doesn't have the best ways to refill its hand. So once it slows down, it usually really slows down. Usually, sword has to play a good amount of 2-drop followers because it's such a board centric deck that it needs these to just to function. And because of that, just as the game goes on, they might just draw more of these 2-mana followers.
Yeah, I think it's definitely one of the more punishing classes to play and miss your early drops. If you
Mm-hmm.
miss one, two, it's so hard to come back. It's very hard.
Yeah, without cards like Whole Soul Swing, which like that's one of the few cards I can think of that like actually is able to help bring you back just a little bit while also clearing up the board.
Yeah, and even that one, it's most of the times it's a 1-for-1, and like we mentioned, the knight is sometimes not as relevant as you would like it to be. It's very different than Diabolic Drain or Razor Claw or cards like K-Glow, cards that allow you to out-tempo while removing threats. So,
Or Sylvan Justice. Like Sylvan Justice, what makes that card so good? Sylvan Justice is very similar to a Whole Soul Swing, but what's so great about Sylvan Justice is you don't have to play the fairy. You can hold on to it.
exactly.
You can
And it
hold.
synergizes with your class so well. So.
Mm-hmm. Whereas for Sword, you generally want to be the person ahead on board, and Whole Soul it punishes you for having the board.
So also let's go on a small tangent here. Let's talk about what kind of cards do you think should be or are bound to be, or what kind of mechanics do you think fit Sword, complete the Sword lore or the Sword mechanics?
So with a card like Barbarossa, it's a card that like cares about the opponent having a bit of a board, and just like with Sword having such a board centric game plan, there are from I'll bring a Hearthstone reference into example. So there's a card called Sea Giant. Sea Giant is a 10-mana 8/8, and for every follower on the board, Sea Giant costs one less. And there's so this rewards you for having a board, and with Sword being able to build up so many boards so quickly, I feel like that type of effect is just good in that kind of class. And I think we've seen an attempt at this. There's a card called Enraged General, actually, and I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe Enraged General is like a 9-mana 6/6.
I think it's eight
Eight.
mana.
It is an 8-mana 6/6, and it for every follower you control on the field, its cost is reduced by 1. And I think that's a really cool mechanic for Sword. I think the issue with Enraged General is that it's so expensive that you can't combo them out.
Yeah, it's again, it rewards you for having this wide boards. Sword loves to do that, but the problem with Enraged General is that at most it's just a 4 play point 6/6, and when you look at cards like Adam, or cards like they are able to be played on turn 3 or 4, and they are massive big bodies. In range general, at best, it's just a 4 play point 6/6. It just seems strong. I mean, it's ridiculous that I'm saying this. Like a 4 play point 6/6 should be bonkers, but the conditions are so rare. It's very unlikely that you're gonna have, at least on turn 4, that you're gonna have a wide enough to summon a rage general, so it doesn't have a big impact. But I would like Sword to be more focused around discounts. You mentioned Gawain. We had the 3 play point commanders that discount themselves, and they'd be 2.
Romeo
That
and
gives
Juliet,
a
yeah.
Romeo and Julia. Thank you. That gives more options, more combo-ish options to Sword, and excites me. When I saw that, I'm like, oh, we can combine this with support cannon. We can make a combo Sword deck, because at the moment, Sword falls into 2 archetypes, and it's always minion focused. It's either aggressive game plan or the mid-range game plan. There's no control Sword because there's no healing, there's no good defensive options, good ways to recover your health, to draw cards, like Cesar mentioned before. So there's no control archetype, even though people really want to make it control archetype, and there's no combo archetype. Like support cannon kind of looks like that, but it's very unreliable.
One thing that you had just mentioned about sword not having any ways to gain HP, I think is that that's been I feel like that's just a problematic thing for sword, and I would like to I like to think that one day sword will start getting heals. I think it would be really cool, like a lifesteal style effect. I feel like that feels like such a sword kind of mechanic to me.
It fits, yeah. The healing for sword must be follower based, so I definitely agree.
Drain, that's what it's called. Like
Yeah.
drain in sword feels so natural to me. Like you have give Barbarossa like a vampiric blade. Like I understand that it sounds it also can be that can be blood as well, but it's still a sword. We can it can do both.
No, or like a paladin.
Mm-hmm.
Like paladins in RPGs are these knights that are meant to heal. They learn healing prayers or healing, I don't know,
The,
spells, I guess.
the thrill
So
of
they can
battle gives
heal
them
you.
strength.
Yeah, their swords heal you, or they gain this bloodlust when they kill their opponents.
Kind of like bladed hedgehog.
Yeah. You devour your opponents and you gain enough nutrients to heal yourself. Yes.
Yeah. I
Like bladed hedgehog.
I would like to see that, like, cuz like right now the only way sword can quote unquote heal itself is preemptively through wards. And
Or
yep.
Roland.
Mhm. Yep. Roland is actually like I want to talk about that card a bit because I think that card's sick. I think that's a card that like has always been gotten like I don't know if scrutiny is the right word. It's had mixed feelings. I feel like it's just a shame that Roland isn't good because I feel like there are so many classes that Roland could have been in that it would have just been great in. Like imagine if you could play Roland in Forest. I feel like that's a strong card in Forest.
I think that I would make two changes and Roland would be probably a lot better. So what the first change is, don't give it to Sword, like you mentioned, or make its amulet a countdown and make Roland cost a lot less. If you make Roland cost like 4 play points or 5 play, like I guess 4 play points is okay because it
You
is a 4/5, right?
yeah, I
I think
assume you cut the stat line on that if
oh
you do that, yeah.
yeah. So it's probably 5 play point because maybe 5. Yeah, 5 should be okay. Like 4/5 for
For
5, it's
for
not
that
that bad.
style effect, you put that amulet like on
Yeah.
a countdown 3.
Exactly. Like make it a countdown. So it's like I think Roland needs to be cheaper for people to actually play and test around with him. And the other thing is make it a countdown because Sword really cares. Like we mentioned in range general, Sword needs board space. Like what I hate the most about Roland is that sometimes that freaking amulet is just hurting me more than actually rewarding. So it's like so annoying.
Yeah, because sometimes just the fact the negating damage like sometimes it just doesn't even come into effect.
Yeah,
It's more
it doesn't
helpful
do
on your followers
anything.
than it is on your health a lot of the time,
Yeah.
which I think is all right. Like what the amulet itself is very powerful. When
So it's because it would fit the role of like Sybil or
mhm.
Sword if it was like 5 play points, or make it like a 3/4. I don't know. Just make it cheaper. I think it's too expensive for such an effect because, like you mentioned, on turn 7, I mean healing, reducing your damage up to 4, and 4 is so much. Like even if you take 4 damage, that's a lot of damage. In 5 attacks, you're dead. So
The Haven card that the 2 mana 2/2 that came out in Wonderland Dreams. What's that one called? Red
noise.
Branch. Yeah, Noise of the
Oh,
Red
red
Branch.
noise. Yeah, noise. It's 3
He
damage,
reduces your
right?
damage down to 3. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he doesn't affect your followers, but when it comes to actually gaining you HP, he's much better at it.
Yeah, because Roland is only effective against big followers. But again, we mentioned before, Sword has really hard time dealing with big followers. And it's not like Roland is gonna stop Bahamut,
Hmm.
because it's not, so
I mean, it's so funny because Roland is actually like if it's able to block off a Bahamut hit, it's actually fantastic. But
yeah,
the
but
thing
it's
is,
not gonna happen.
more often than not, I feel like if you're going to be playing Roland, your opponent's going to be at around 10 mana. And if they're dragon, and they're going to be Bahamutting you.
Yeah. or Blink Zeus, and you're like, okay, I take 4 damage instead of 5, I guess, but it's
Hmm.
like it's still taking a lot of damage. And, okay, against aggro decks, Roland is like pointless because they have small followers. They go wide. They have removal. They have dance and deaths, and they just can hit you in the face for a lot of damage with their small followers. And against big threats, Roland, okay, you stop your opponent from doing damage, but you still need to remove the threats. And Sword just it doesn't have the tools necessary for that.
So, in, let's I feel like we've been hating on Roland quite a bit. I don't know if hating is exactly the right word, but we've been
uh,
talking poorly about her for a bit. So why don't we talk about some cards in Sword that we like, and maybe some, yeah. What are some cards that you think are very integral to the class?
I think okay, integral to the class, I would have to say Floral Fencer. I think Floral Fencer, when I started playing this game, Shadowverse,
Hmm.
I believe that Floral Fencer was the most broken card I've ever seen in every card game. Because when you look at it on turn 4, it's just so much stats and it's so many bodies. I learned that in card games, the more bodies you have across multiple stats, the better it is. And she's just perfect.
Floral is I really like Floral. I think she's cool. She's really powerful when you're able to get her on curve too with the evolve. One thing that I do think about is kind of weird about Floral though is like one thing that happens with Sword is the 4-drop slot for them tends to get like a little interesting, and they end up just having to pick between Floral or something like Geno.
Talk about Chino, Mr. Zero.
You
No, you
wanna
love
talk
that
about
card.
Geno?
Nah, I'm gonna allow you to talk about it because you were a Gino fan. You
So
see Gino in every single sword. So,
I think Geno is like one of the most common cards in all of Sword. Like I feel like almost every single card in Swordcraft as a whole is just a Geno reskin. So there's like you got Geno, right? And then you have Floral Fencer, which is just evolve Geno on the draw. And then you have Blitz Lancer, which is Geno on 3. And then you have Young Ogre Hunter Momo, which is Geno with Bane. And then, and then you have Novice Trooper, which
Ku-
is 3 mana Geno that can go face. And
and then
then
you have Kulhulin, which is our Gino.
no, Kuhulin is Geno that lives, right? It's enhanced
Yeah,
Geno.
it's Halberd Gino.
Oh yeah.
It doesn't die. Yeah, yeah, it
It,
doesn't take damage.
and then there's one more. There's Princess Juliet, which is Commander Geno. But
Good assessment.
good assessment. I
No, go
mean,
ahead. Go ahead.
uh, realistically, these cards are all they're different cards, right? But like I think this goes back to what we were talking about, how Sword is just like kind of pigeonholed into this. Like all we can do is give our cards Rush and Storm, and there's such similar mechanics. They make the cards feel very undifferent or indifferent. Or
Unique. Your game plan is always the same. It always feels linear. Even if I've seen people say, no, you can do a lot of different things, but like you mentioned, at the end of the day, they all feel the same.
oh,
It's either I do damage to your followers or I do damage to your face.
I missed the Geno. There's also Letham.
Oh yeah,
Letham is bad Geno.
yeah. We talk about this one. Latham is the child of Floral Fencer and Gino, the rejected child. They gave
Yes.
them they gave him to adoption.
Yeah, the Floral Fencer and Geno are both uncommons. Latham is the rare version of the two cards, and it is just we don't talk about it.
No, it's just ignore them. So, like for me, the key card of the sword is Floral Fencer because she's just like what Sword wants to do. They want to develop big boards. They want to get a lot of like followers. They care about value, but my favorite card is by far Barbarossa. As a value fan, and Barbarossa is infinite value. There's nothing else I need to say.
I think for me, one of my favorite cards in Sword is Roundtables Assembly. I don't like when it's being played to pull 2 Juliets. I think that's a little silly. But I think when it's like used as more of a toolbox card, I think that card's awesome. I think it allows you to fit so many different things in your deck, and it gives you, while it might not always get you what you need, it is consistent at getting something that's helpful enough.
You all also need to build your deck with
Mm-hmm.
that in consideration, and I like cards like that. I
Hey,
like cards that force you to think about your deck and what you have left in your deck.
that card cares about you playing commanders, and that something like that will actually could potentially help bring this commander officer archetype into fruition.
Absolutely. And like you mentioned, it's very different than the other sword cards because deck thinning is something we didn't have in sword, and now we have cards like round table assembly and the looks the is it floral lancer looks something. Sorry about that.
Which one?
And it looks she's called looks and she's a 1/2 the gold card 1/2 for 2 and
Oh,
draws a
Lux.
commander.
Lux Solar
Lux, yeah,
Lancer.
solar lancer. Thank you. That is also a card that kind of like roundtable assembly. It cares about what you have in your deck left, and it allows you to specifically get to get a specific card and to combo get some potential combos. I enjoy that. It pushes Sword into a different direction.
I agree. I'm just another card that I'm thinking about that happens like quite a bit for Sword is Mars. What I like about Mars is that so we were talking about how Sword's general game plan is I want to control the board. Mars really, really, really rewards you for doing this. If you're able to keep your Mars alive, it's fantastic. But the thing is, unlike a card like Alice for rewarding you for being ahead, when you play your Mars, it's not actually giving your units more attack. So it doesn't, while it makes your units more sturdy, it doesn't bring the game to an end that much sooner. I
Yeah,
find.
it also
Mhm.
if you have a big board, it's not a win more card. It's kind of like Plan B. If things go south, you have a Mars and you can combo it off with a White Paladin if you fall behind. But if you're ahead, you're not gonna buff your state. So like you mentioned. But it is a very powerful card and it demands removal. And I think people are still learning how to play around with it
Mhm.
because they were playing it on curve and it was getting very low value. But now people are kind of saving it for the white paladins, for the floral fencers and
Mhm.
whatnot, and for the roundtable assemblies, which I think is a way more interesting way to use Mars.
Mhm.
And having the ability to spawn veteran fencers, we haven't talked about that one. That's a very important card as well. Getting a ward for 2/2, it protects your entire board. It protects your Mars, so
Mhm.
it is a very powerful effect. So I have a question for you, Cecile.
Mhm.
We talk about sword cards.
Yes.
So let's look at Shadow versus Collection. And what card do you think when you look at a card? What do you think? How do you feel? Like, okay, I'm gonna rephrase it.
Which of these cards would I want to put
Which
into
of these
Sword?
cards? Yeah, which of these cards do you think is Swordcraft instead of their actual craft? Actual.
That's the difficult one. There's got to be something with Storm that shouldn't be in Sword, right? um.
The question is, so when you look at the collection
Mhm.
and you look at Shadow versus Collection, there are some cards, specific cards that kind of want to be in Swordcraft. I can give you an example. I
Mhm.
believe that Eagle Man. I think that Eagle Man should be a Sword class because Sword cares for playing followers and getting the discount, like we mentioned for Enraged General, is an effect. It's kind of like a mechanic bound to be Swordcraft like because it cares for followers and spawning a lot of boards. So I think Eagle Man should be a Swordcraft card. So that is the question that I posed. What
Uh,
kind of card do you think should be Swordcraft instead of blah 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 craft?
this one might be a little dangerous, but I kind of want to say Catacomb. Um, I think so. Sword doesn't really have too many leave the battlefield style effects. But what I do like about Catacomb is it allows you to just keep a full board, and that's something that we all know. Sword needs that. Sword relies on that. I
Yeah,
don't know if it's true to say more than Shadow, but potentially it's possible that it needs the board more than Shadow does. So maybe a card
yeah,
like Catacomb isn't necessary, but maybe like what's a good example is Tristan of the Round Table. That is a card that I think is a 5 mana 3/4 or a 5 mana 3/5.
I think so. If you have
And
a commander, I know which one you're talking
mhm, if you have a commander, it summons itself again when it dies without getting the effect back. But yeah, like a card like that. Now that card happens to be weak because it's 5 mana and it's understated, and you also need a commander, and that's not always the easiest thing to do. But like that style effect that allows you to lose the board, but can or allows you to have a sticky board is just good. Like we see Geno. I talked about Geno earlier. Another reason Geno is really good. It has enhanced 6 and it leaves behind 2/1/1s. One of the few cards that can survive an AOE and sword and still leave something on the board.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, if you want to care for keeping board states, you also care to have resilient board states.
Mm-hmm.
And another effect that I would like Sword to have would be, again, it's an even effect, like the resilient to be targeted, like cards like Manu, White Tiger, Estrella Beast. I think that Sword really wants an effect like that. In effect, like we talked about Psima, something that makes your followers invulnerable to effects. Because again, you want to make them survive. You want to get value out of Mars, out of Walfrieds. You want something to survive. And having an effect like that, the resilient, you know which one I'm talking about? The
Mm-hmm.
resilient to be
Mm-hmm.
targeted, the diamond shaped ones.
Yeah.
I think that should be an effect that would be helpful for Sword.
What do you think about? Oh, I just had it on the tip of my tongue and I forgot it. The Give me a second to rethink about this one.
Well, I can talk
Oh,
about.
Wood of Brambles. What do you think about a card like Wood of
Oh,
Brambles in something in Sword? That allows your units to trade a bit without dying, which is also another good way to just preserve your board.
yeah, Clash. When I saw Clash back in the day, I thought that would be I thought that was a sword specific card.
I mean,
I don't
that is
remember
what
why,
happened.
but I
A clash is what happens when two swords smash into each other. They clash. It is called a sword clash.
yeah, I thought Clash was a specific class mechanic. I thought they were upgrading the the sword official officer and commander to have a second effect like Clash. But then I realized it's just a Shadowverse mechanic. But it does feel like it's a specific mechanic to Sword Guard because they're the ones that care about combat stuff like that. So I think they should have a lot more Clash
How many
mechanics.
cards do they
Instead,
even have that have clash? I can't think of too many off the top of my head.
yeah, instead they have a lot of enhance, which is kind of weird. Like Sword having the enhance mechanic.
Like
I think
actually
they're
like
the
preparing
ones.
for this episode, I found out I didn't realize this. So there is no class in the game, not even neutral. Neutral has just as many enhanced cards as Sword. Sword has the most enhanced cards, sitting I think at 8 or 9 enhanced cards. I think it's 8.
Isn't that weird? Like you look at it in Hands, I see that in like Dragon because you have the ramp. I see it in Haven because it's a slow class. Like Sword of all the things,
Well,
it's interesting.
what I do like about Sword having all these enhanced cards is I had mentioned earlier how I feel like Sword is a little pigeonholed into playing all of these early game cards. And something like Enhance lets you play these early game cards, but they don't fall off that hard in the late game. But to see Sword have the most enhanced cards, I think is a little strange.
I would like to see the most Clash cards. I actually don't remember a single Clash card. I think there's a new one for Starforge that is like a small follower that deals 1 damage when he clashes, that
Flail
might be
Knight.
neutral. Flail
Flail
Knight,
Knight
wait.
is a 3 mana 2/2 with Clash, deal 1
Oh,
damage.
it's a 3 man.
Yeah, I completely
God
forgot
damn.
about that one.
Like when you think about it, Shadow has Belenas, we have Flail Knight.
Yeah, it feels so much worse. And I just feel like for whatever reason, Sword is the board focused minion centric class. But I feel like for whatever reason, Sword units tend to get neutered in stats. Like
Yeah, but when people tell me about Sword, all I feel deep inside is I could be playing Shadow. I could have the same amount of Swarm board states. I could have Resilient board states. I could have really good finishers like Demon Lord Nectar. I could have really good value in Thane. Instead of having to play cards like Otohime, when you compare like Thane to Otohime, Thane is so much better. It gives you wide boards. It gives you a zero play point, really good, well statted. It gives you cheap damage. When you look at Ektar, it's so versatile. It fulfills so many game plans. And then you look at Sword, and it's trying to do the same thing. It's trying to build board states. It's trying to make your opponent not have a good answer for your board states. But it just feels a little subpar compared to Shadow. Like you mentioned Catacombs, that's a really good example.
I think I think we hit a lot of the things that we want to talk about Sword Day. Do you feel like we missed anything?
No, I think that's a good way to end it. It's the board centric class.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, it's not at its best at the moment, but we'll see what comes around. And 28, I believe.
And now I know you yourself were saying that you weren't like the biggest fan of like the Smork archetype and stuff like that, how Sword is. And like I'm a more simple man. I not prefer is the wrong word, but I enjoy simple beatdown decks. I find good fun in them. And I feel like the my biggest gripe with how Sword plays is the beatdown Sword decks never feel like a fun aggro deck to me. They just feel like a just very linear baseline aggro deck. And that is, I think, the last comment that I have for the episode.
It's a good way to end it. And yeah, I I mean, I'll have to see more. Maybe a little bias on Sword because when I started playing Shadowverse, I always considered that to be the class. I don't know why. Maybe that was the first mission I played, or it just
Hmm.
seems simple. Seems
Hmm.
simple to me. It's very basic, just trading, right? It teaches you how to trade in the tutorial, like officers, commanders, its followers. They don't have interesting spells, complicated effects. That's the best way I can put it. Sword is a very complex, very deep, but basic class at the same time.
Well, I agree. I'm excited for the future. I'm excited for Sword, and I am excited to go on to the next more in-depth class discussion. I think the next one that we have up on the line is going to be Rune, right?
Yep,
I believe so. I believe that's the next one on the list.
we
Well,
got a lot to talk about that one.
that Rune has a lot more going on than Sword does. I feel like.
Again, like I mentioned, we have Sword is kind of basic. Moon is the opposite example. It is very complicated. It goes very wide in archetypes, so I think it's gonna be interesting.
It does a lot of things. So with that, everyone, we will see you in 2 weeks when we bring out the next episode. Thank you all for coming and joining us. If you're not already on our Twitter, you're not already on our Discord, please come and join us. I'll put the link to that in the description. And have a good week, everyone.
Bye bye. Watch NG.
Yeah, watch NG.